Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. I'm happy to be part of the conference and also to present my work to you, entitled "The Degree and the Determinants of Smallholder Commercialization in Two Rural Provinces of South Africa." I wrote this work together with my colleague, Professor Abbyssinia Mushunje from the Department of Agriculture Extension and the University of Hare. My presentation will follow the structure of a standard research paper, where I will introduce the topic and talk about the data and methods that we've used, and come to the key findings of the work, and also conclude and give some recommendations. To introduce the topic, the role of smallholder agriculture is multifaceted. It includes rural economic growth, food security, and job creation. However, this happens when there is a shift from subsistence to commercial practice or mode of production, which is better known as commercialization. In the South African context, the National Development Plan envisages that 165,000 jobs could be created in 2030 through commercialized smallholder agriculture. A lot has been written about this in the South African context. However, existing studies in South Africa only focused on crops, mostly on one specific crop, which is maize, a crop that is grown mostly by smallholder farmers. And they ignore livestock. In all those that have looked at livestock, they would only look at output market participation, even in crop. Now, this study seeks to bridge this knowledge gap by implementing a top-bit regression and also finding out, measuring the commercialization of smallholders. Now, coming to the data, we've used a randomly surveyed data from two provinces in South Africa. We mainly went to the deep rural areas in these district municipalities, which are listed here. Regarding the methods, so we've used commercialization index as our main and principal measure of commercialization, which has been used widely by other researchers. So we have contextualized this into crop commercialization index and livestock commercialization index. And our cutoff point between whether a smallholder is commercialized or is subsistence oriented is if the smallholder sells more than 50% of their produce. So that one will be commercialized, and that the smallholder that sells below 50% of their produce, then we regard that as a subsistence producer. We did that for both smallholder crop farmers and smallholder livestock farmers. And so to measure or to estimate the determinants of smallholder commercialization for both crop and livestock, we use the top-bit regression framework, which is outlined here. Coming to the findings, so on the market orientation front, we have measured that using or asking respondents about their primary reason for producing crops and livestock. So we can see notable differences between crop smallholders and smallholder livestock farmers. It seems that most of these crop farmers, smallholder farmers, produce mainly for income source, main income source than smallholder livestock farmers. As you can see here on the right, which is the gray area, and then on this side is the orange area, only 36% versus 54%. And all others are just additions to this. Then market participation, which is also another measure. So we also see here that there is a big difference between livestock and crop commercialization. We see that in crop, smallholders tend to sell most of their produce, about 70% compared to 30% of livestock farmers, or 30% average produce that is sold to the market. This we can attribute to the fact that most of the crops that are produced by smallholders are perishable crops. So each farmer would want to get rid of the produce before it expires. Unlike in livestock, where the the stock would be live and would not cause any harm other than maybe in poultry. You can keep it, will increase the cost of production if you keep it more than you should. Coming now to the determinants of smallholder commercialization, we will start with livestock. So we can see that there are various factors that affect or determine whether a smallholder would be commercialized or not. We have used several variables here, including farmer's age, gender, farm type, that is, or farmer type, that is, if a farmer is full-time or is part-time. And there's some risk attitudes which are measured using a scale from 1 to 10, where 1 is really risk averse and risk accepting to 10. And then the training, whether a farmer received a training or not, agricultural training, and the extent of hired labor or external labor or hired labor, the use of it. So we can see here for livestock that gender was significant, but negative. The sign is negative, implying that it seems that females tend to sell more of their produce than or compared to males, which is really against the literature. But each case is specific, so we can't really rely most on that. And there's also in literature the point that male tend to develop much love for their animals than females. Some females in most cases would want to get profit, but the men would want to keep the animals. So maybe that's the reason. And then in terms of risk, we see that farmer moderate risk, or farmers that prefer moderate risk, it's also a determinant of whether a smallholder would be commercialized or not, which is a good factor because producing at for the first time or in the first place is also a risky activity. Producing agricultural goods, you don't know whether the produce we will get good yield or not. There will be good rains or not. So it takes someone who can take some kind of risk. Then agricultural training, pertaining to it, we can see that, yeah, it's also a factor that determines whether a smallholder will be commercialized or not. And for those who did not receive the training, it encourages those that have received the training. And then on the external or hired labor front, we see that each additional unit of labor for livestock decreases the chances of or the likelihood of being commercialized, which we could explain by the fact that in livestock labor in livestock farming system, smallholder livestock system is used to for herding. So you don't really need so much headers. You only need one or two, depending on the size of your head. So now, if you want to have more and more, then you wouldn't make so much money. Then coming to the crop now. So we see that there are different variables that determine whether a smallholder will be commercialized or not if you compare crop and livestock. So in crop now we see risk again and agricultural training and external labor, but we don't see the gender. So here as well, the risk attitudes. Farmers that are risk averse, which is the general trend in small scale farming, they also um, determine whether a smallholder will be commercialized or not. This is the general trend which is in literature, that smallholders are risk averse. And those who did not receive training, then they really can't they don't we can't this can't determine whether they will be commercialized or not. And then the external labor again, and it's positive in this time, because for crop you need really more of the labor to be productive. Now coming to the conclusion, this study sought to measure smallholder commercialization using market orientation and market participation. It also wanted to determine these factors that will or that could be used or estimate whether a smallholder will be commercialized or not. So the findings showed that smallholders in our sample were market oriented. However, market orientation and participation were higher on crops, 70% compared to the 30% on livestock, which really signal that commercialization is different from crop and livestock activities. Also, the determinants of commercial, yeah, so I've already put it this. Now, the recommendations, the findings provide some signal to the design of land distribution policies on matters that require more attention to effectively link smallholders to the commercial sector through the land distribution, which is one of the major goals in the South African agriculture landscape. Also, smallholder agricultural activities have different determinants of commercialization. Therefore, policies and strategies used to enhance small commercialization should be aware of such factors, and different levels of commercialization dimensions should be in place. That will be the end. I thank you.